They called her damaged goods. The scarred waitress at Murphy's Cafe hid behind baggy sleeves every morning, enduring whispered insults about her disfigured arm from customers who saw only ugliness where something extraordinary lay hidden. For 4 years, Elena Rodriguez had kept her secret, pouring coffee while people mocked her appearance and treated her like she was worthless. But today, when a cruel contractor's violent shove sends her stumbling, her carefully maintained disguise crumbles. The sleeve pulls back, revealing a tattoo that makes a quiet customer in the corner freeze in recognition. His shocked reaction will destroy every assumption in that cafe. What incredible truth hides behind those scars? Hit subscribe if you want to see what happens when a bully picks on the wrong person. This story will blow your mind. James Patterson had claimed the same corner booth for over 3 hours, staring at cold coffee while battling 17 years of haunting questions. The weathered photograph pressed against his ribs felt like a live ember, a faded snapshot of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division, their youthful faces glowing with invincibility before that devastating September night in Kandahar shattered everything they believed about survival. He studied the waitress gliding between tables. With unmistakable military bearing, her movements calculated and alert, constantly positioning her body to shield her left side from view despite the cafe's oppressive heat that had other customers fanning themselves desperately. The way she swept the room with her eyes every few minutes, the way she carried herself. It all screamed combat training to someone who recognized the signs. It has to be her. He breathed for what felt like the 100th time, his words lost. Beneath the struggling air conditioner's death rattle. After 17 years of combing every VA facility, every veteran meetup, every military forum and registry, she's right here serving coffee in this nowhere cafe. Yet uncertainty ate at him like acid. How could he be absolutely sure when his final glimpse of her face had been through flames and smoke, covered in blood and dirt? Her voice calling his name was the last thing he remembered before unconsciousness claimed him in that burning vehicle. The memories crashed over him in waves. The thunderous roar of the IED explosion, the immediate inferno that transformed their armored truck into a death trap, the jammed door that refused to budge despite his desperate efforts, and then her face materializing through the smoke like a guardian angel who chose his life over her own safety. He recalled her hands, steady despite the chaos, dragging him through a window that seemed impossibly narrow. Remembered how she'd returned for Williams, even as ammunition started exploding from the intense heat. Most vividly, he remembered the instant when the second explosive device detonated and she'd shielded his body with her own without hesitation. The morning sun slanted through Murphy's grimy windows, casting long shadows that seemed to divide the room into territories. Bright spaces where normal life continued, and darker corners where old traumas lurked, waiting for moments like this to resurface. The entrance bell crashed violently, jolting James from his memories as Derek Stone and his construction crew barged into the cafe with aggressive swagger that immediately poisoned the peaceful morning atmosphere. Derek towered at 6'3" of pure arrogance wrapped in a Stone Brothers construction uniform that stretched tight across muscles built more for show than actual labor. His predatory gaze swept the room like a hunter seeking the weakest prey, the kind of man who had peaked in high school and spent every day since trying to recapture that fleeting dominance. His eyes locked onto Elena as she approached their table. With her order pad and his mouth twisted into the cruel smirk his workers knew all too well. The expression that preceded his favorite form of entertainment disguised as humor. Behind him, his 2 crew members followed like hyenas trailing a lion, already chuckling in anticipation of whatever verbal abuse their leader was about to unleash. "Well, well, gentlemen, looks like we've got ourselves a mystery here," Derek announced loud enough for half the cafe to hear, his voice dripping with false friendliness that barely concealed the venom beneath. "Hey waitress, why don't you dress for the weather? This place is scorching hot and you're bundled up like it's winter in Alaska. What are you hiding under all those layers? Something disgusting?" Scars from a drug lab accident? Needle tracks? You don't want the health department seeing? His crew snickered obediently, the harsh sound cutting through the morning calm, while other customers suddenly became fascinated with their newspapers and coffee cups. That familiar cowardice that allows evil to flourish when good people choose comfort over courage. Elena approached their table with measured steps, her face a mask of professional calm, perfected through years of similar encounters. Though James noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, how her left hand stayed carefully hidden behind the notepad. The morning light streaming through the windows seemed to spotlight the unfolding drama, creating an atmosphere where something had to give. "Good morning, gentlemen. What can I start you with today?" Her voice carried no emotion, no reaction to the insult, which only seemed to fuel Derek's cruelty like oxygen-feeding flames. The very lack of response seemed to infuriate him, as if her refusal to be baited was a personal insult to his authority. From his corner booth, James watched the scene unfold with mounting anger, his hands unconsciously forming fists that bore their own battle scars. Something about the waitress's composure, the way she maintained dignity despite the verbal assault, spoke to him of deeper strength, someone who had faced far worse than petty bullies and survived horrors that would destroy weaker souls. Derek leaned back theatrically, making an exaggerated show of examining her from head to toe with theatrical disgust that would have been comical if it weren't so genuinely cruel. Maybe start by explaining why you're dressed for winter in the middle of summer. Hiding burn marks from some kitchen accident when you were too stupid to work the fryer? Or maybe you're one of those cutters who can't handle real life without taking it out on yourself. The words hung in the air like poison while his companions shifted uncomfortably, their laughter becoming forced and nervous as even they sensed he was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. The tension in the cafe had become almost palpable, like the oppressive heat before a thunderstorm, with every patron acutely aware of the drama unfolding, but caught in that peculiar paralysis of bystanders who wanted to help but feared becoming targets themselves. Elena's internal battle played, out in micro-expressions most would miss. The tightening around her eyes, her breathing shifting from steady to carefully controlled, the slight tremor in her left hand that she tried to conceal by gripping the order pad tighter. Don't skip ahead. You need to see what happens when this bully discovers who he's really messing with. Smash that subscribe button. For just a moment, the cafe dissolved around Elena, and she was back there, sand and blood filling her mouth, the crushing weight of combat gear on her shoulders, the agonized cries of wounded soldiers piercing the desert night. But she'd learned, long ago, how to bury those memories, to lock them in a vault marked "Do Not Open," and continue functioning in a world that neither understood nor cared about what she'd witnessed and done. The breakfast rush at Murphy's required a different kind of courage than combat, the courage to smile and serve coffee to people who saw her scars and made assumptions, who whispered behind their hands and stared when they thought she wasn't looking. Derek reached into his wallet with theatrical flair, extracting 2 crumpled dollar bills and hurling them at Elena's feet like he was feeding pigeons. "There's your tip, sweetheart. Pick it up. Maybe save up for some scar cream, though I doubt they make anything strong enough for whatever horror show you're hiding underneath all that fabric." The bills fluttered to the grimy linoleum like autumn leaves, and the entire cafe seemed to hold its breath as Elena stared down at them. An elderly veteran at table 4 had partially risen from his seat, his weathered face flushed with indignation, his hand reaching for the cane beside his chair, but his wife's urgent whisper of, "Don't cause trouble, Frank, it's not our business," kept him from standing fully. Even the cook had stopped his usual clatter in the kitchen, peering through the service window with a frown creasing his face, his hand tightening on the spatula as if considering whether to intervene. It was one of those moments that revealed character, that showed who people really were when faced with the choice between comfort and courage, and most were failing the test. Elena bent slowly to retrieve the bills, her movements careful and controlled, each action deliberate and measured. The very air seemed to thicken with unspoken shame and building tension, creating an atmosphere where the pressure would either dissipate or explode, and everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see which way the morning would break. It was as she straightened that Derek made his catastrophic mistake, the moment that would transform everything in ways none of them could anticipate. Whether from malice or simple recklessness, his hand shot out as she rose, shoving her shoulder, hard enough to send her stumbling sideways. The violent motion caused her carefully maintained appearance to unravel as her uniform shirt pulled loose and her sleeve rode up past her elbow. But it wasn't just scars that were revealed in that moment of calculated cruelty. It was something else entirely. Something that made James Patterson's blood freeze before surging with recognition that hit him like a physical blow. The tattoo stood out starkly against her scarred skin, military precise and undeniably authentic. 82nd Airborne Division, Kandahar, 2007, wrapped around an image of paratrooper wings and the division's distinctive insignia. The scars themselves told their own story, a horrific narrative written in damaged flesh that spoke of extreme heat and violence, tissue that had been burned and healed in patterns that suggested not accident but sacrifice. The entire cafe could see it now. This glimpse into a hidden history that shattered their perceptions instantly. One of the younger customers, a college student home for summer break, gasped audibly, "Holy shit, that's a combat tattoo," loud enough for everyone to hear. The atmosphere shifted palpably, like air pressure dropping before a storm, as understanding began to dawn on some, while others remained locked in confusion. Derek, however, remained oblivious to the shifting atmosphere, too intoxicated by his perceived power to notice how James had risen from his booth, or how other patrons were now looking at Elena with something approaching reverence rather than pity or disgust. "Oh, this is perfect," he laughed harshly, pointing at the exposed tattoo with theatrical contempt. "Look at this, boys. She's playing soldier now. What did you do? Buy that fake tattoo online? Trying to get sympathy by pretending to be a veteran?" His laughter echoed off the cafe walls like breaking glass, grating and cruel. "I've seen this scam before. These stolen valor types who buy military surplus at thrift stores and pretend they served. Pathetic. As if anyone would believe someone. Like you actually fought for our country. You probably can't even spell Afghanistan, let alone claim you were there." Elena stood frozen, her shirt still disheveled, the tattoo and scars fully visible now under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her face had gone pale beneath her carefully maintained composure, and for the first time since the confrontation began, real emotion flickered across her features. Not hurt or anger at Derek's words, but something deeper and more complex. The look of someone whose most private pain had been forcibly exposed, whose carefully constructed walls had been breached by casual cruelty. Her hand moved unconsciously to pull down her sleeve, but stopped midway, as if she realized the futility of trying to hide what had already been seen. The silence in the cafe had become complete, even the coffee machine's usual gurgle seeming to pause in respect for the moment's gravity. James Patterson had crossed half the distance to their table before he even realized he was moving, his chair clattering to the floor behind him in his haste. His eyes were locked on that tattoo with religious intensity, his mind racing through memories and possibilities with the speed of automatic weapons fire. Every detail he could see confirmed what his heart had been telling him for the past 3 hours. The way she moved, the careful control, the specific design of that unit insignia that couldn't be faked because he'd worn the same one. His hands shook as he reached into his jacket pocket, fingertips brushing against the photograph he'd carried for 17 years, like a talisman against forgetting. The moment crystallized around him, past and present colliding with the force of an explosion, and suddenly he could smell cordite and burning fuel mixed with the mundane scents of coffee and bacon grease. "2nd Airborne," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the silence. 82nd Airborne Division, His voice cracked on the words, years of searching and wondering condensed into this single moment of recognition. No, it can't be. After all this time, it just can't be. He stopped 3 feet from Elena, close enough to see how her eyes had gone wide with something between fear and recognition, far enough to give her space to run if she chose to. The examination on his face was intense and methodical, the kind of scrutiny that came from years of assessing threats and allies in split-second decisions. His gaze traveled from the tattoo to her face, searching for familiarity in features that time and trauma had altered but not erased entirely. Could you be? The question hung between them like a bridge across 17 years of separation. Kandahar, September 2007. Each word was carefully chosen, a password to shared experience that only 2 people in that cafe could fully understand. Elena's reaction was immediate and visceral, her body tensing as if preparing for impact, her eyes darting to the exits like a trapped animal seeking escape routes. But there was something else there too, a flicker of recognition she couldn't hide despite years of practice at concealing her emotions. "Oh my God," James breathed, and now his voice carried the weight of certainty, of puzzle pieces clicking into place with audible finality. "Sergeant Rodriguez! Elena Rodriguez!" The names fell from his lips like a prayer answered after years of doubt. His hands moved unconsciously to his chest, fingers tracing the outline of scars hidden beneath his shirt, scars that matched hers in their origin, if not their severity. "You're the one. You're the one who pulled me out of that burning truck." The statement wasn't a question, but a declaration, a truth so profound that it seemed to alter the very air in the cafe. "I've been sitting here for 3 hours because I thought I was seeing ghosts. I've been carrying your picture for 17 years, searching every VA hospital, every veterans gathering, every online forum, and here you are serving coffee in the middle of nowhere." Elena's carefully maintained composure finally shattered like glass hitting concrete. The tray crashed from her hands with a sound like artillery in the quiet space, cups shattering and silverware scattering as coffee spread across the linoleum. In a dark pool that nobody moved to clean, she stumbled backward, her hand reaching for the counter to steady herself as her legs threatened to give way. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in denial of what her eyes were telling her. "You're supposed to be. They told me you didn't survive. They said the injuries were too severe, that you died in Germany." Her voice broke on the last word, years of guilt and grief pouring through the cracks in her professional facade like water through a broken dam. "I thought I failed you. All these years, I thought I failed to save you." Tears tracked down her, cheeks unchecked, each one a testament to nights spent reliving those moments, wondering if she could have done more, moved faster, been better. The revelation rippled through the cafe like a shockwave, touching each person differently but affecting all profoundly. Keep watching. This gets even more incredible. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already. Derek's laughter died in his throat, his smirk fading as even his limited intelligence began to grasp that something significant was happening, something that relegated his petty cruelties to the insignificance they deserved. His crew exchanged uncertain glances, their earlier bravado evaporating in the face of genuine emotion and history that dwarfed their small-minded games. The elderly couple clutched each other's hands, the woman's eyes bright with unshed tears as she whispered something about their own son who had served. The college student had lowered his phone, the urge to record seemingly forgotten in the face of something too profound for social media. Even the cook had emerged fully from the kitchen, his bulk filling the doorway as he watched the scene unfold with the attention of someone witnessing history. "Alive," James confirmed, his voice stronger now, filled with the kind of emotion that comes from gratitude so deep it has no adequate expression. "Because of you. You ran into hell itself to pull me out. When everyone else was running away from the fire, you ran toward it." He took a step closer, his movements careful and non-threatening, aware that he was approaching someone who had been living with invisible wounds for nearly 2 decades. They told me a female soldier saved my life, but in the chaos afterward, I lost track. They shipped me to Germany, then Walter Reed. Months of surgeries and recovery. By the time I could ask questions, you were gone. They said you'd been discharged, disappeared into civilian life. His hand went to his pocket, pulling out the photograph with reverent care. This is all I had. This picture from before that night and the memory of someone refusing to leave me behind. Elena's gaze fixed on the photograph, her breath catching as she recognized faces from another lifetime. Young soldiers grinning at the camera with the confidence of those who hadn't yet learned war's true cost. Her finger traced the air above. One face in particular, a young man whose features bore enough resemblance to the one standing before her to confirm what her heart already knew. Martinez didn't make it, she said quietly, naming another face in the photo with the reverence reserved for the dead. Neither did Williams. I tried. God knows I tried to get everyone out, but the second explosion, her voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence that had haunted her dreams for 17 years. The weight of survivors' guilt was evident in every line of her body. The burden of being the one who lived when others didn't. The curse of memory that never faded no matter how many coffee cups she filled or tables she cleaned. The atmosphere in Murphy's had transformed completely, the very air seeming to thicken with the weight of shared history and unspoken sacrifice. Customers who had entered seeking nothing more than breakfast and coffee found themselves witnesses to something far more profound, a reunion that spoke to the bonds forged in combat, the debts that could never be repaid, and the healing that sometimes comes from simply knowing that your sacrifice mattered. Derek's face had undergone a transformation from smug superiority to confusion, and then to something approaching desperation, as he sensed the shift in the room's dynamics. Like a predator suddenly realizing it had wandered into the territory of something far more dangerous than itself, he doubled down on his cruelty with the blind persistence of a man who had never learned when to retreat. "Oh, come on," he scoffed, gesturing wildly at the scene before him as if he could wave away the emotion like smoke. "Don't fall for this act. She probably just peeled potatoes in some military kitchen if she served at all. Look at her," he pointed at Elena with a shaking finger, his movements becoming more agitated as he felt his audience slipping away from his control. "She's no hero. Just a scarred-up nobody trying to get sympathy with a fake story about Iraq and burning vehicles and whatever else she's selling." The digital age had arrived in Murphy's cafe with a vengeance while the confrontation unfolded. Smartphones appearing like weapons drawn in defense of honor, their cameras capturing every word of James's testimony and Derek's increasingly pale face as he realized the magnitude of his error. "This is going viral!" someone shouted from the back, their voice filled with the excitement of witnessing justice in real time. 200,000 watching on my stream right now. It's spreading across every platform." Another voice chimed in, closer to Derek and impossible to ignore. "That's Stone Brothers Construction on his shirt. I just tagged their whole leadership team, their corporate account, their website." The interconnected world had made the cafe's walls transparent, transforming a local incident into a globally witnessed moment of reckoning that would follow Derek Stone for the rest of his life. Derek's phone began buzzing insistently, the screen lighting up with notification after notification in a cascade of digital doom. His face, already pale from James's words, went ashen as he glimpsed the caller ID showing his boss's name, then his supervisor, then numbers he didn't recognize that were probably reporters or angry citizens who had found his information online. "My boss," he whispered, the words barely audible over the electronic cacophony. "Oh God, my boss is calling." But the crowd that had formed between him and the exit wasn't interested in his suddenly urgent need to deal with the consequences of his actions. Their faces reflected the collective decision that he would face the music here, in front of everyone, in front of her. It was James's reaction that proved most devastating. His face cycling through emotions from disbelief to rage to something colder and more controlled, the expression of a soldier who had learned to channel anger into purposeful action, who had been trained to use words as weapons when violence wasn't an option. He turned away from Elena slowly, deliberately, each movement calculated to draw attention and hold it, transforming himself from desperate searcher to avenging angel in. The space between heartbeats. Peeled potatoes! The words exploded through the cafe with the force of a battlefield command, causing several people to flinch involuntarily, coffee cups rattling on tables from the sheer power of his voice. You dare to stand there in your comfortable life with your intact body and your ignorant assumptions and question her service? James paused, letting the questions hang in the air with the weight of incoming artillery, his eyes scanning the assembled crowd to ensure he had their complete attention before he began the demolition of Derek's stone that would be talked about in this town for years to come. September 18, 2007. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. 120 degrees in the shade, except there was no shade in that hellhole. Just sun and sand and death waiting around every corner. His voice dropped lower, forcing everyone to lean in to hear. A storyteller's trick that commanded absolute attention while building tension like a tightening spring. Our convoy was returning from patrol. Routine, we thought. The kind of mission we'd done 100 times before. 3 vehicles, 14 soldiers, everyone tired and thinking about getting back to base for what passed for dinner in that place. Paused again, his eyes distant now, seeing not the cafe but a dusty road half a world away, reliving moments that had been seared into his memory with the kind of clarity that only trauma provides. Then the world exploded. The IED hit the lead. Vehicle, my vehicle, with enough force to flip a 10,000-pound armored truck like it was a toy. His voice caught on the memory, humanizing the statistics of war. Martinez was driving. Good kid from San Antonio, 23 years old, had a fiancé back home he was going to marry when we got back. The blast killed him instantly. At least, that's what we told ourselves, because the alternative, that he suffered in those flames, was unbearable to consider. The silence in the cafe had become complete, broken only by the soft sound of someone crying, perhaps multiple people touched, by the story of sacrifice laid bare before them. Williams was unconscious, bleeding from a head wound that looked survivable if we could just get him help fast enough. And me, his hand went unconsciously to his chest again, fingers tracing scars through his shirt. I was trapped. The blast had twisted the door frame like a pretzel, jamming it shut, and fire was already spreading from the ruptured fuel tank, eating its way through the vehicle's interior like a living thing hungry for human flesh. James looked directly at Derek now, his gaze piercing through the man's bravado like a laser through paper. Have you ever seen a vehicle burn from the inside? Have you ever felt your skin beginning to blister while you're still conscious? Still, aware that you're about to burn alive? Have you ever known with absolute certainty that you're going to die badly and there's nothing you can do about it except scream and pray for it to be quick? The questions weren't rhetorical. They were weapons aimed at Derek's conscience, designed to shatter his comfortable ignorance with the brutal reality of what he had mocked. That's when she appeared. Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, our unit's medic, who was supposed to stay back with the wounded from the other vehicles, but who never could follow that particular order when her people were in danger. James's voice had taken on a rhythmic quality, like a prayer or battle hymn, each word carefully chosen to build the narrative toward its inevitable climax. She ran into those flames. No hesitation, no consideration for her own safety, no thought except that one of her soldiers needed help. She had nothing but her bare hands and a combat knife to break through the window, her medical supplies useless against the immediate threat of fire. He was moving now, pacing like a caged predator, his anger building with each word until it filled the cafe like a physical presence. She pulled me out first, dragging 200 pounds of soldier and gear through a window that seemed impossibly small, the flames licking at her uniform, her exposed skin already blistering from the heat. But she didn't stop. She went back for Williams, even though anyone with functioning eyes could see the fire had spread too far. Derek's phone continued its relentless buzzing, joined by text message alerts and social media notifications in a symphony of impending consequence that grew louder with each passing second. That's when the second IED detonated, James continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, forcing the absolute silence in the cafe to deepen as everyone strained to hear. Command later said it was positioned specifically to catch first responders, a tactic designed to maximize casualties among medics and rescue personnel. He had to stop, swallowing hard against the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him even after 17 years. Elena saw it coming, that split second of recognition that comes from experience and training. And instead of diving for cover like any sane person would do, she threw her body over mine. The confession hung in the air like a verdict. The blast should have killed us both instantly. Would have if she hadn't made herself a human shield, taking the shrapnel and debris and superheated gases into her own body to protect mine. Bob Martinez, the cafe owner, burst through the kitchen doors with the fury of someone who had heard enough to understand that his establishment had become ground zero for something far beyond a simple customer dispute. A Marine veteran himself, though he rarely spoke of it beyond the faded tattoo on his forearm, Bob's expression reflected personal shame mixed with rage. He took in the scene with a single sweeping glance, Elena standing exposed with her scars, visible to all, tears still tracking down her face, James trembling with righteous anger, and Derek desperately trying to silence his constantly ringing phone while the crowd blocked his escape. "What in the hell is going on in my cafe?" Bob's voice carried the authority of someone who had given orders under fire, transforming his question into a demand for immediate answers. One of the live-streaming customers thrust their phone toward him, showing him a replay of the confrontation that had already been viewed millions of times. Bob's expression darkened with each passing second, his jaw clenching as he watched his employee being humiliated and assaulted. "Derek Stone," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Get out of my establishment now. If I see you within a mile of here again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing and assault." But Derek's path remained blocked by customers who had formed a human barrier, their faces reflecting collective anger and judgment. "Answer it here," someone demanded, pointing at his buzzing phone. "Put it on speaker. Let's all hear what Stone, Brothers Construction, thinks of their employee." With shaking hands that could barely hold the device steady, Derek accepted the call and fumbled with the speaker button. His boss's voice exploded into the cafe with volcanic fury. "Stone? What the hell have you done? We've got thousands of messages flooding every channel. Our website crashed. There are news vans heading to the office right now. The owner called me personally." The voice paused for breath before delivering the killing blow. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will box up your things. Don't come to the property. Don't list us as a reference. And Stone, you better pray this doesn't escalate to legal action because we won't be backing you up." The line went dead, leaving Derek standing there with the phone still pressed to his ear, his face drained of all color as the reality of his situation crashed down upon him like a collapsing building. Elena found her voice for the first time since the confrontation had shifted from cruelty to revelation. "I didn't want this," she said, her words measured and careful despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I just wanted to serve, coffee and peace, to live a quiet life where my past didn't define every interaction." She looked directly at James, and her voice softened with 17 years of carried pain. "I thought about you every single day, every nightmare, every time. I looked in the mirror and saw these scars. I thought about how I failed to save Martinez, how Williams died, despite everything I tried." Her voice broke on the names. each one a weight she'd carried alone for too long. I'm sorry I couldn't save them all. I'm sorry I wasn't faster, stronger, better. James crossed the space between them in 2 strides, his arms enveloping Elena in an embrace that spoke of shared trauma and impossible gratitude, of bonds forged in fire that time couldn't break. "You saved who you could," he said, his voice thick with emotion he'd held back for 17 years. "That's everything. That's more than everything. I've searched all this time to say thank you, to tell you that my daughters exist because of you, that my wife has a husband because of you." They clung to each other while the cafe erupted in spontaneous applause, the sound building from scattered claps to thunderous appreciation that seemed to shake the very walls. Even Derek's abandoned crew members joined in the applause, perhaps finally understanding the gravity of what they had witnessed. Bob Hutchinson waited for the applause to die down before speaking again, his voice heavy with regret and newfound respect. "Elena, I owe you an apology that's 4 years overdue. All this time you've worked here and I never knew, never asked about your story. That's on me." He paused, visibly collecting himself. "Effective immediately, you're promoted to assistant. Manager with a 40% raise. And you don't hide those scars anymore, understood? Anyone who has a problem with them has a problem with me." He turned to address the entire cafe, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "This establishment honors those who serve. Always has, always will. That's not changing." The crowd parted like the Red Sea to let Derek stumble toward the exit, his phone still buzzing with incoming calls and messages from a life that was rapidly unraveling. As he reached the door, he turned back one final time, perhaps to offer some defense or apology, but the collective glare of the patrons killed whatever words he might have spoken. He fled into the morning sun, leaving only the echo of the entrance, bell, and the bitter taste of consequences earned through cruelty and ignorance. Want to see what happened to Derek 6 months later? Don't forget to subscribe. The ending will surprise you. Murphy's Cafe had been transformed in subtle but profound ways that spoke to the power of truth revealed and honor recognized. Elena Rodriguez stood behind the counter in her manager's uniform, the short sleeves revealing arms marked by scars. She no longer felt compelled to hide from the world. The wall behind the register had become a shrine to service. A framed photo of Sergeant Elena Rodriguez in full combat gear alongside a placard reading, "Our Hero," now joined by photos of other local veterans who had found the courage to step forward and share their own stories. The morning rush was in full swing when the entrance bell chimed with a sound that had become as familiar as breathing, and a figure appeared in the doorway that made several regular customers pause mid-conversation. Derek Stone stood there, but the swagger that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like humility. He approached the counter slowly, aware of the suspicious glances from customers who recognized him and remembered that terrible morning 6 months ago. "I know I'm not welcome here," Derek began, his voice subdued and carrying none of the arrogance that had once marked every word. "But I needed to deliver this personally." He placed a thick envelope on the counter with careful, respectful movements. "I lost everything after that day. My job, my apartment, my girlfriend. Had to move back in with my parents like I was 20, years old again. But the worst part wasn't losing my stuff. The worst part was realizing what kind of person I'd become, what kind of man I'd been." He gestured to the envelope with hands that Elena noticed were different now, calloused from honest work instead of manicured from vanity. "I've been volunteering at the Veterans Support Center for 5 months now. That's $3,000 from our fundraising efforts. It's not enough, not even close to enough, but maybe it's a start toward making things right." Elena studied Derek carefully, noting how different he looked from the man who had tormented her 6 months ago. The expensive gym-built muscles had softened into the leaner frame of someone who did actual physical labor. His designer clothes had been replaced by a simple work shirt bearing volunteer badges from the Veterans Center. Most telling were his eyes, no longer hard with entitlement, but soft with something that might have been genuine remorse. Several regular customers had tensed when he first walked in, remembering that morning and ready to defend Elena again if necessary. Old Frank from Table 4 had already half risen from his seat, his weathered hands gripping his coffee cup like a weapon. But something in Derek's demeanor, the way he kept his eyes respectfully downcast, the way his shoulders hunched, as if carrying invisible weight, made them pause and watch instead of act. "They made me earn the right to deliver this," Derek said quietly, his voice rough with emotion he was still learning to process. 5 months of showing up every day, no excuses, no complaints, no shortcuts. Painting walls, fixing wheelchairs, listening to stories from people who actually served their country instead of just talking about it. He paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "The veterans at the center, they said if I could prove I was serious about changing, if I could do the work without expecting praise or recognition, then maybe I deserved a chance to try making amends." Elena picked up the envelope but didn't open it, simply held it while studying the man before her. She could see writing on the back, signatures and messages from other volunteers at the center, veterans who had apparently decided that even someone like Derek deserved a chance at redemption if he was willing to work for it. "They didn't make it easy," Derek continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "The first month, they had me cleaning bathrooms and mopping floors. Wouldn't let me anywhere near the veterans. Said I had to prove I could do the humbling work before I earned the right to do the meaningful work." He looked up briefly, meeting Elena's eyes for just a moment before looking away again. "There's this Vietnam vet named Charlie who comes in every Tuesday for physical therapy. Lost his leg to a landmine in '68. For weeks he wouldn't even acknowledge I existed. Then one day he saw me staying late to scrub wheelchairs that didn't really need scrubbing, and he asked me why." Derek's voice cracked slightly. "I told him about what I did to you, about how I'd become the kind of man who attacks people for sport. He just stared at me for the longest time, then said something I'll never forget. 'Son, a man ain't defined by his worst moment, but he sure as hell is defined by what he does after it.'" The cafe had grown quiet around them, other conversations dying away as customers found themselves drawn into this unexpected moment of human reckoning. Elena noticed that even the usual morning bustle had slowed, as if the entire world was holding its breath to see how this story would end. "Charlie started talking to me after that," Derek continued. "Told me stories about coming home from Vietnam, about how people treated him, about learning to live with loss and guilt and shame. He said the hardest part wasn't losing his leg, it was learning to forgive himself for the man he'd been before he learned what really mattered." Elena felt something shifting inside her chest, a loosening of tension she'd carried for months without realizing it. This wasn't the same man who had thrown money at her feet and called her names. This person standing before her carried himself differently, spoke differently, seemed to understand things that the old Derek never could have grasped. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Derek said, his words coming faster now, as if he was afraid he'd lose his nerve. "I know that what I did can't be undone with volunteer work and donated money. But the folks at the center taught me that sometimes the best way to honor the people you've hurt is to spend your life making sure you never hurt anyone like that again." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn piece of paper, unfolding it carefully. "This is a letter from Maria Santos. She's an Iraq war veteran who lost both arms to an IED. She comes to the center for counseling and she asked me to read this to you." Elena's breath caught as Derek began to read in a voice that shook with emotion. "To the hero at Murphy's Cafe, Derek told us your story, how you saved lives in combat and then came home to serve coffee to people who couldn't see your worth. We wanted you to know that Derek's been learning what it means to serve others instead of himself. He's painted our community room 3 times, fixed every broken thing in our building twice, and listened to our stories without judgment. We don't excuse what he did to you, but we believe people can change if they do the work. Please consider, giving him a chance to prove he's not the same man who hurt you. Derek folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the envelope. 23 veterans signed that letter. People who've earned the right to have opinions about honor and service and second chances. They don't speak for you, and they can't forgive on your behalf, but they believe I'm trying to become someone better. Elena looked around the cafe, seeing faces she'd served coffee to for years, customers who had witnessed her humiliation and were now witnessing this moment of potential redemption. She thought about the scars on her arms, visible now for everyone, to see and how they no longer felt like symbols of shame but reminders of strength. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said finally, her voice steady and clear. "That's what service taught me. Sometimes you save people who wouldn't save you back. Sometimes you show grace to people who don't deserve it. Sometimes that's what makes us human." She opened the envelope and glanced at the contents. Not just money, but letters from veterans, photos from volunteer events, documentation of hours served and lives touched. It wasn't just a donation, it was a record of transformation. "The Veterans Center always needs volunteers," Elena said, looking Derek in the eye. "Keep showing up. Keep doing the work. That's all any of us can do. Keep showing up and trying to be better than we were yesterday." Derek nodded, tears threatening to spill over as he backed away from the counter. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for your service, for your sacrifice, and for this chance." As he turned to leave, Elena called out one more time, "Derek?" He paused, looking back with hope and fear warring in his expression. "Charlie was right," she said with the slightest smile. "A person isn't defined by their worst moment. They're defined by what comes after." Derek left Murphy's Cafe that morning, a different man than he'd entered, carrying with him not just forgiveness but the responsibility that comes with it. The bell chimed softly behind him as he stepped into a future that offered redemption to those willing to work for it. Elena watched him go, then turned back to her work, serving coffee to customers who now saw her not as a damaged waitress hiding her scars, but as a hero who had learned that sometimes the greatest victories happen not on battlefields, but in quiet moments when we choose grace over grudges and hope over hate. The morning sun streamed through Murphy's windows, illuminating a cafe where extraordinary courage had been revealed, where justice had been served, and where the possibility of redemption lived in the space between hurt and healing. James Patterson had become a regular customer, stopping by every Tuesday morning to share coffee and conversation with the woman who had saved his life 17 years ago. They talked about their families, their struggles with civilian life, and the strange ways that fate sometimes brings people back together when they need each other most. The viral video of Derek's humiliation had garnered over 50 million views across all platforms, but more importantly, it had sparked a nationwide conversation about how we treat our veterans, about the invisible wounds they carry, and about the heroes hiding in plain sight in every community. Murphy's Cafe had become something of a pilgrimage site for veterans and their families. The wall of honor behind the register now featured dozens of photos and stories, each one a reminder that courage comes in many forms and that service never really ends. It just changes shape. Bob Martinez had framed the first dollar bill that Derek had thrown on the floor that terrible morning, mounting it next to Elena's photo with a simple inscription. Some threw money. She threw herself on a grenade. Know the difference. Local news crews still occasionally stopped by, hoping to catch Elena for an interview, but she always politely declined. She'd said everything she needed to say in that moment of confrontation. Now she preferred to let her daily actions speak for themselves, serving coffee with dignity, managing her staff with quiet competence, and treating every customer with the respect that Derek Stone had failed to show her. The college student, who had first live-streamed the confrontation, had used his viral fame to start a scholarship fund for children of wounded veterans. The elderly couple from Table 3 had volunteered to help coordinate donations. Even Derek's former crew members, had found new jobs, and reportedly spent their lunch breaks volunteering at soup kitchens. 6 months after Derek's attempted redemption, Murphy's Cafe hosted its first annual Veterans Appreciation Day. The parking lot was filled with motorcycles from the local Veterans MC, food trucks donated their services, and local businesses sponsored activities for military families. Elena stood behind the counter, watching children play while their parents, many bearing their own visible and invisible scars, shared stories and found community. James Patterson worked alongside her, having taken a part-time job helping to coordinate veteran outreach programs. "You know what the best part is?" James asked as they watched a group of Iraq War veterans teaching local kids how to properly fold an American flag. "What's that?" Elena replied, refilling coffee cups for a table of Vietnam veterans who were swapping stories with some recent Afghan war returnees. "Derek," James said, nodding toward the parking lot where Derek Stone could be seen helping elderly veterans navigate from their cars to the cafe entrance. "6 months ago, I wanted to destroy him. Now look at him." Elena followed his gaze. Derek wore a simple volunteer t-shirt and moved with the careful attention of someone who had learned that true strength meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. A Korean War veteran was leaning heavily on his arm, and Derek's face showed genuine concern as he helped the old soldier find a comfortable seat. "Charlie was right," Elena said, echoing the words she'd spoken to Derek months earlier. "A person isn't defined by their worst moment." "Think he's really changed?" James asked. Elena watched as Derek knelt beside the Korean War veteran's chair, listening intently to whatever story the old man was telling. The same hands that had once shoved her now gently adjusted a blanket around the veteran's shoulders. "I think he's trying," she said, "and sometimes that's the most any of us can do." As the afternoon wore on, the cafe filled with laughter, stories, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from community built on mutual respect. The Wall of Honor had grown to include photos from the day's events, capturing moments of connection between generations of veterans and the civilians who supported them. Derek approached the counter as the event was winding down, his volunteer shift nearly complete. "Elena," he said quietly, "I just wanted you to know, Charlie's moving into assisted living next month. His family asked if I'd help coordinate his care through the transition." Elena nodded, understanding the significance. Charlie had become Derek's mentor in more ways than one, and taking responsibility for the old veteran's welfare was both an honor and a test. "That's good," she said. "He trusts you. That means something." Derek smiled. Not the cruel smirk from that terrible morning, but something genuine and warm. "It means everything. Thank you for giving me the chance to earn it." What do you think? Did Elena make the right choice? Can people truly change? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more incredible stories of courage, justice, and second chances. Sometimes the greatest heroes are hiding in plain sight, serving coffee and changing the world one act of grace at a time.